So I want to talk about this article from Fox News today on the Marine veteran Daniel Penny, who was arraigned in New York City today for the subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely. Marine veteran Daniel Penny was arraigned Friday in Manhattan criminal court on one count of second-degree manslaughter for the subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely. A judge agreed to release Penny, a 24-year-old college student, on a $100,000 bail package signed off by prosecutors and secured by bondsman Ira Judelson. Penny turned himself into police early Friday for fatally choking the erratic homeless man May 1st on a northbound F train in a case that has polarized New York City. Penny's attorney, Thomas Kneff, said the young man, who is 1 week shy of graduation from college, acted to protect himself and other passengers who were being threatened. If convicted of the charge, Penny could face up to 15 years in prison. Now, that defense argument is true because you have witnesses talking about how Jordan Neely was threatening the other passengers. Meanwhile, a witness who was on the subway when Penny put Neely, 30, in a chokehold told the New York Post she was praying for him. The 66-year-old woman said Neely was threatening the passengers during the altercation. He said, "I don't care. I'll take a bullet. I'll go to jail." Because he would kill people on the train, the woman said of Neely. He said, "I would kill a mother effer. I don't care. I'll take a bullet. I'll go to jail." So Penny didn't step in until Neely's behavior got out of hand, the retiree said. She thanked the young man afterwards for protecting the passengers. According to a freelance journalist who recorded the confrontation, Neely, who suffers from mental illness, was allegedly acting aggressively and screaming at passengers in the subway car. Now, you'll see in the picture here that Daniel Penny has him in a chokehold. Now, understandably, being a Marine veteran who's trained to protect the innocent, he assessed that the situation was probably going to escalate to physical violence. So he made the judgment call to stand up and intervene. Now, that's a wonderful thing, something that you don't find much in our society anymore. And I think that for two reasons. Number one, people are pretty much afraid of what could happen to them if they got into a fight with somebody or if they intervened in something. But secondly, and I think mostly, is they're concerned about what the backlash would be from social media. Should their intervention be deemed as racist or bigoted or, transphobic or, whatever. The backlash that comes from these social media assaults on people's lives is horrendous. You're defamed publicly at every turn. And unfortunately, as we see so often in our society, people believe the rhetoric. People don't take the opportunity or the time to investigate a circumstance, to really come to an educated, mature judgment about what really happened. In essence, people love being ignorant, and they will just believe whatever they're told, which is pretty much the foundation for leftist ideology. The reality is they don't want you to be smart. They don't want you to be aware of the truth because then their rhetoric can't affect you and it won't produce the response that they want to have from you. So here we have in this circumstance, according to the witnesses and the investigative reports, that Daniel Penny intervened once he deemed that the behavior got out of hand. Now, the mistake that he made was that he went to a very dangerous submission technique in using a chokehold. In the law, there's a legal accountability for the amount of force somebody will use in a circumstance. So I went to the National Institute of Justice to just review what the police use of force is. So, broadly speaking, the use of force by law enforcement officers become necessary and is permitted under specific circumstances, such as in self-defense or in defense of another individual or group. Now, that's what we had in this circumstance. There is no single universally agreed upon definition of use of force. In other words, if you're going to use force, it falls to you to use correct judgment in how much force should be used. The International Association of Chiefs of Police have described use of force as the amount of effort required by police to compel compliance by an unwilling subject. In other words, I need to make sure that I don't use any force exceeding what is necessary to bring an end to the incident. Now, uh, as we go down further here, we'll see that it says law enforcement officers should use only the amount of force necessary to mitigate an incident, make an arrest, or protect themselves or others from harm. The levels or continuum of police force use includes basic verbal and physical restraint, less lethal force, and lethal force. And it falls upon the person to have the awareness of the circumstance to decide what level is necessary for the situation. Um, Now, police officers are trained for that, and they struggle with it, as we can tell by the countless videos and reports you see on the news about policemen who've used excessive force. But a lot of people don't realize that when you're in a very high adrenaline circumstance, judgment isn't always the clearest for you. So in this circumstance, we have this circumstance where Jordan Neely is threatening to kill people, he's threatening physical violence, and this Marine makes the call that I need to intervene before this escalates into actual physical violence. So, but again, his decision to do that subjected him to his responsibility to meet the legal requirement of equitable force. He should not use force that is beyond the circumstance's need. Now, in this circumstance, it's testified that Jordan Neely took off his coat and slammed it on the floor, clearly exposing the fact that he did not seemingly have a weapon on him. Being a smaller man than Daniel Penny, it was evident that a subduing of Jordan Neely would not or should not have been that difficult for him. So, in my mind, the chokehold was a subjection technique that should not have been used, a subduing technique that just was probably more on an extreme level. I, as a trained martial artist, seeing the circumstance, hope I would have just realized, okay, I could just jump him, put him in a bear hug from behind, whereby I would be pinning his arms against his side. And then I would take him to the ground, wrap my legs around him in a scissor lock, and then just hold them there, which would have incapacitated him. The chokehold is a severely dangerous technique to use. And I know that it's a go-to technique for a lot of people because it's all over, mixed martial arts. It's glorified and used in movies all the time and on TikTok and YouTube videos. And so people don't realize the extent of harm that can come from a chokehold. And in this case, Jordan Neely died because of it. Now, the issue here is that you have your leftist politicians screaming murder and bigotry and racism and all these things, and they're enraging the people out there that don't have the integrity to investigate a circumstance to come to a well-informed judgment about anything. Now they're all on YouTube and TikTok screaming racism and rioting and justice for Mr. Neely and all that. But and in that, just completely discounting the other side, which is you have frightened passengers who are being terrorized by this guy with an excessive criminal record. He was screaming in an aggressive manner, this freelance journalist, Alberto Vasquez, said to the New York Post. Uh, he also, let's see here, he had a history of violent attack on subway riders, including in 2021, punching a 67-year-old woman in the face, breaking her nose and orbital bone. 4 months earlier, he allegedly slugged another woman in the face on the subway platform, court records show. In 2019, he allegedly sucker punched two men in the face on different subway platforms 1 month apart, breaking one victim's nose, the records reveal. The man had more than 36 arrests, including exposing himself to a woman on a subway platform in 2021 and harassing a subway rider in 2020. It was clearly evident that that the Marine, Daniel Penny, was justified in his assessment that this conduct was probably going to escalate into physical altercations. And so what he's guilty of is poor judgment. Now, look, I know the right is claiming that he should be exonerated. He's completely, a hero. And yes, he was heroic in stepping up, and especially in a society where people just won't do that anymore. But the reality is this: when you choose to step up, you also choose then to take upon yourself the legal requirement to meet the standards, the lawful standards of how you step up. You have to know that if you're going to enter this, if you're going to intervene, you now have inserted yourself into legal accountability. And clearly that poor judgment is something that he should be held accountable for. And I know that's contrary to the message of the right, and I am a conservative, but I also believe that the truth is what we on both sides need to be willing to address, not our political aisles talking points. We need to deal with the truth if anything's going to happen. Now, the reality is that this is just one more tragedy that should never have happened, because you have the politicians screaming on their platforms, oh, the injustice, we're going to fight for him and whatever. But my question is, where were you when you should have been fighting that would have caused this to not have ever happened? Why is it that we only hear about you doing this after the tragedy? If you're elected in the office, you should be fighting for the resources and for the organizations that are needed to provide the care that Jordan Neely would have needed. You should have been there in the soup lines, helping to feed people like Jordan Neely. Instead, you go around just seeking your own agenda, promoting your own rhetoric for your agenda, just so you can have a greater spotlight and benefit your campaign or whatever it is you use it for. But what you definitely and clearly aren't using it for is for the help and the care for the people like Jordan Neely that are out there. I'm telling you that if you would have done your job better, this could have probably been completely avoided. But I understand also why, as a politician, they can't. And the reason for that is the people. You see, these people that are now polarized by the outrage of their leftist politicians, right? They're screaming on TikTok now and on YouTube about justice and about the white supremacy and the racism and the bigotry and all these kind of things. But the reality is this: you won't step up either. Because where were you when these organizations that would have fed Jordan Neely needed $1 or needed $10? Where was your check? You care so much to be on TikTok and to be on YouTube screaming about justice and these poor guys and people that are being afflicted. Well, if you really care, why weren't you donating to the organizations that would have cared for Jordan Neely? Why aren't you in the soup lines providing the much needed volunteer services they need to provide the care? You're nowhere around because you don't want to have to invest anything of yourself. You don't want to have to be responsible yourself. And because of that, we have politicians now who play the same game because they can't get the job done if we, the people, aren't willing to be accountable for what it takes to get the job done. Now, I'm not saying we should just have politicians in there who spew their rhetoric and then try to invest in their rhetoric. I'm saying that once we put aside the rhetoric and start looking into what is true, start investigating the truth about a circumstance, then we should be able to look at the circumstance and from a knowledgeable and insightful perspective say, okay, you know what, this could have been avoided if this would have happened. So you know what, let's stop thinking that screaming on TikTok for likes and subscriptions is the answer, and let's start realizing that we need to get personally invested for a solution to manifest itself. We need to be willing to give. We need financially and physically. We need to be willing to volunteer. We need to be willing to be a part of. And mostly, we need to be willing to stop being mindless, ignorant sheep that'll just vote for whoever wants to spew the rhetoric and start voting for people who actually want to put aside the rhetoric and deal with the truth so that we can come up with applicable and viable solutions so that people like Jordan Neely could get the help they need. And people like Daniel Penny don't have to be facing the potential of 15 years in prison for doing something that so other few would do. Think about these things. Think about it on a personal level. What am I doing? And let's stop electing these people that just prey on the ignorance of their constituents and start really, really digging into the truth about these circumstances. That's the only way we're going to bring change. If you enjoy this content, please share it with others, as it'll definitely help the channel. And please don't forget to hit the like button, click the subscribe, and punch that notification bell to be notified of any new videos. Hey, as always, thanks so much for taking the time to listen. Hey, until next time.